Welcome to another episode of Israel at War. I'm Phyllis Zimbler Miller, and today I have with me someone who never thought he'd write a children's book, Roman Sandler, and yet he found that after October 7th, the need to write a children's book. He lives here in Los Angeles with his wife and two daughters, and he's going to tell you now why he wrote this book, Under the Rocket's Glow, Shearer's Journey to Courage. So, Roman, take it away.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Phyllis. And thank you again so much for having me on. So I guess the origin story of the book was it was kind of a convergence of two things. I think at first like you said, I have two little girls and we get to read a lot of children's books to them. We have PJ Library. If your listeners never heard of it,
Yeah.
it's kind of a service that sends you children's books every month. And a lot of them are really great, but some of them as I was reading it, I left something to be desired, let's just say. And I thought, I think I could do this. And then I have no background in writing. And kind of at the same time, the new generative AI tools like Dolly and Midjourney started becoming available. And I was just, really fascinated by them. So in my spare time, I was kind of, tinkering with them and playing with them. And it's just, wow, this is incredible. And I was like, maybe I could actually write an awesome kids book with this because the quality of illustrations were really good. But at that point, I still didn't have anything to write about, so it was kind of just a latent thought. And then October 7th happened, and my wife is Israeli. We're observant Jews, and we have a lot of family in Israel. It's a big part of our lives and our identities, and so it really hit us really strongly when we found out. And then our daughter, we obviously in the beginning wanted to shield our 5-year-old daughter from kind of all of the gory
Is
details.
she the older one or the younger one?
She's the older one. Yeah, the younger one is she's two. But we would have all these conversations, then we kind of hush whenever she entered the room and she'd ask us, why are you guys being quiet? What are you guys talking about? She's a very smart girl. She knew something was up. And we still didn't have a way to communicate it to her. And I think that thought kind of was in the back of my head because I did want to, I knew that there was a better way to communicate it to her than, just kind of, but it had to be thought out. And I think one time I was taking a shower and it just kind of hit me, hey, why don't I try to do a children's book about this and try to explain to her in a way that's palatable for her as a 5-year-old to kind of understand what's going on. And a couple months later, the end result of kind of, just hours tinkering around in my spare time was this book.
So let's talk about the book for a minute. You write it as if you were in Israel rather than in the United States. So it's from the point of view of a father and child in Israel during the attack. Is that correct?
That is, yes.
And what was the main message that you wanted to get across when you wrote it? I
I,
mean,
I
let me just say, he goes back into history, which I think is a very interesting and very important part of the book, and then to explain what's going on. But what did you most want to get across?
yeah, sure. So I think that I, I like to think in terms of first principles, and I think that when you're talking to a child, it kind of forces you very much to in kind of first principles thinking because you can't start, in the complexities of the Israel-Palestine conflict. You really have to get back to the basics because they really don't know. Um, and I started kind of trying to think of myself of, well, what are the first principles here? And so I think at first, the motivation was to explain October 7th, but then I kind of realized that if you really want to explain what's going on, you kind of have to start from the beginning, and that's going all the way back to why are we Jewish? Why do we care about being in Israel? Why do we say that we should be there? Why, if people want us out and attacking us, let's just pack our bags and go somewhere else. It's kind of an extreme statement, but I think for it's kind of like the question any 5-year-old would ask. Well, like, what's the big deal? And so, that very the project kind of turned into from something very focused on October 7th and then there's only really a page or two about October 7th. It's really kind of the framing for the book. And then most of the book is about Jewish history. And I think that the message that I wanted to convey are two things. One is that we have a very long and storied history, and that this is not the first time that that bad people wanted to do bad things to us. Um, but that we have this has happened throughout our history, and we have survived then, and we've got through it better and stronger, and we will get through this better and stronger now. And then the other message is to show her our connection to the land of Israel, why it is that we think it's important, almost to the point of, kind of, people will put their lives on the line and have put their lives on the line for us to be in the state of Israel, why that's important, because there are, obviously other places for us to go. But I wanted to,
Questionable at this point, but okay.
yes, unfortunately. So
Uh,
yeah,
so uh, let's talk about the illustrations for a moment. You
sure.
and I, before I started the recording, you used AI, and let's talk about some of the quirks in the book that I kind of teased you about.
Sure. Um, yeah, and I'm happy to pull up examples, and I'll kind of, I'm happy even to kind of go through the original versions and kind of what it became. But yeah, I'm not an illustrator, and I'm not, I'm not, I could never do anything of this quality by myself. So obviously, I did use AI tools, and it's, I think it's far from perfect, but I think it does a good job. I think that the funny thing about AI is that it's so incredibly detailed and beautiful at the same time as it has such obvious quirks that and any kid can point out, and in fact she did. Um, so the compared to like your average children's book, I think the quality of a lot of the illustrations are, especially when you kind of look at them from far away, are just really incredible, and I'm very proud of them. But then
I
at
would
the same
agree. I would agree.
yeah. But at the same time, when you kind of look a little bit closer, there's obvious holes. So, um, one of the big issues which I spent a lot of time fixing, and I think I got most of it, but not all of it, was was the faces. So, like the up close faces, it'll do very well, but kind of the faces in the background, it's not nearly as good at. Um, I'm trying to see if I have any kind of older versions that I can pull up of some of the originals. Um,
That's okay. I think we'll stick with the current book. So I want to know, what was your daughter's opinion? Did you read her successive versions until she said that's the right one, or did you wait till you had finally finalized it before you read it to her?
yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. So I try to take it to a pretty final state, but then um, eventually, I got the preprints, the author's versions, and we did go through about two or three versions before she was satisfied. So she was kind of my editor, and she helped with the pictures, but she was like, it was really even more important for help to help with the words, because it's been a long time since I was 5 years old, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not a children's author. So there was a lot of words that I used that in retrospect she was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? So kind of a lot of our editing sessions consisted of me taking the beautiful language, flowery language that I put in there, and just crossing it out to words she would understand.
Very important, very important. So, where can people, before I forget, though there are other questions I have, where can people get the book? And we'll
Sure.
put a link at the end of the description when I upload this, but where can they get it?
Yeah, on the best way to do it is on Amazon. There's a
That's where I got
hardcover,
it.
yeah, and
Yeah.
softcover available. I'll just say parenthetically, like I said, I've never done this, but Amazon has a service called Kindle Direct Publishing. It's so incredibly easy. I mean, anybody can upload a PDF, and then they'll it's print to order. So whenever anyone orders, they'll print your PDF into a book. So it was I thought I'd have to like find a publisher for this or something like that, but it's self-publishing it really opens the doors to people.
Yes, it does. As I learned that many years ago. You don't have to inventory, you don't have to have all the books in your garage. It's very, very important.
Yep.
So let's talk about the reception of the book, both positively and negatively.
Yeah. So when I wrote this, I really, this is a passion project. I really expect to sell maybe 50 copies to like friends and family. but it was kind of more just to to do it for myself, to prove that I can do it. Um, and I think when it first came out, that's kind of what it was. I shared it on Facebook. Some of my friends and family shared it on Facebook, and I think the reception was very positive. But it was, maybe I sold like 100 copies, which I was like, okay, this is great. That's kind of what I
Right.
expected, actually a little bit more. And then I had a, I have a mutual friend with Mime Bialik, and I asked her if she'd be willing to share it with her. So it's kind of she might be interested in it, and she did, and Mime liked it, and she shared it, and that's kind of when all hell broke loose, both positive and negative. So after Mime shared it, so uh, right now, just to kind of give you the raw numbers, it's been out for I forget how many months, maybe like 4 months already, and I've sold 2,200 copies so
Wow.
far. And I would say 1,500 of those copies were in the preceding weeks, like the couple weeks since after Mind Bialik shared it. Um, that just really made o- opened it up, and so many people shared it, and then so many people kind of reached out and just really gave positive feedback. That's kind of when it exploded. But that's also unfortunately when, kind of the anti-Semite, anti-Israel Hall of Fame on social media found out about it. Kind of people with millions of followers, kind of, politicians, people, just the whole gamut, everything from kind of like far left progressive politicians to straight up anti-Semites to people in the Muslim world, just picked this up and just went with it. A lot of hate. I'm happy to if if I can show you just kind of some of the tweets.
No, I'd rather you just told us.
Okay, yeah. So maybe I'll just read them. Jackson Hinkle, he's a guy with tens of millions of followers, I think. I forget, but deranged Zionists made a children book about shooting rockets at Gaza. Obviously, it's not about shooting rockets at Gaza. It's about Gazan rockets hitting Israel, but can't argue with these people. Brianna Joy Gray, she is also a podcast host, uh, senior politics editor at the Intercept. Former national press secretary for Bernie Sanders campaign. She
Mm.
said, these rockets are killing children. Max Blumenthal, I think he's the son of a senator, but also huge kind of anti-Israel person. He actually took the trouble to Photoshop the title, and instead of under the rocket's glow, Shira's journey to courage, he said, "We're the Nazis now. Israel's inevitable journey to fascism and self-destruction. Zionism is an anti-Semitic death cult." Those are just a few of them. Each of those have over 1 million followers, I believe. And then obviously there was a lot more. For people who have less followers. Um, somebody found me on Facebook and basically gave me a death threat. People started a review bombing campaign on Amazon to telling kind of all of their followers to leave negative reviews. So it, you know,
Wait, can I ask you a question? Didn't Amazon stop that? I thought Amazon's algorithms are supposed to figure that out and prevent
they were doing a really good job at first, but then in the last month or so, I don't know what happened, but they really let it slide because I think it started at like when I was friends and family, it was obviously a 5 stars, and then it went down to 4, and then it went back up to 4.2, and now it's at like 3.5. So, I mean, you can check the Amazon reviews. It's very bifurcated. All the reviews are either, or let's just say 95% of the reviews are either 5 stars or 1 star. You can imagine why. It's the 3 star reviews, like the 2 or 3 of them, which are the really interesting ones to read, as always. But yeah, most of them are almost all of them are 5 star or 1 stars, and it's just kind of unfortunately a battle of which whether there's going to be more 5 stars or 1 stars. It's kind of turned into a battleground, unfortunately. Um,
So wait, I have a question. I don't
yeah,
understand why these people with a lot of followers are bothering to attack you over a children's picture book.
right. It's absolutely crazy, and I think it's a sign of the world we live in. I I tried my best. I wasn't thinking about them, but I have a sister who is I would say kind of left wing, not so involved, and I wanted it to be something that she could read to her daughter without having any qualms. So I really tried to make it as apolitical as possible. And obviously the, the state of the Israel-Palestine conflict being what it is on the level of the debate being so acrimonious and dirty and bitter, I would say more on one side than the other. Anything and everything will be politicized. I'm almost sure these people didn't read the book. Most of the one-star reviews on Amazon are not verified purchases. I don't know why Amazon lets them stay on. So which means they never bought the book, probably never read
Yes.
it. But I think just the fact that Mime Bialik, who is a pro-Israel personality on social media, shared it, that means that it must be evil because if somebody pro-Israel likes it, that the negation of that is that it's bad, which is just kind of how their morality works. So, anyways, I think that unfortunately it's just simplified to that point. I don't think any of them read it. I think I think it's comes down to that.
So, in fact, if I'm going to go double check the end, what the really overall message is that Jews have survived this long and we're going to continue to survive. To me, that's the overall message, that you've shown the history and how many times we've overcome our enemies and that we will continue to survive.
Yeah.
So, what did your daughter think when she's held the actually printed book in her hands?
Yeah, she thought it was pretty awesome. I actually when I was using the AI, I tried to make the face look like her. And yeah, I think I did all right, as far as a cartoon version. So she was really excited about it. People in our kind of small community, our friends and family, they kind of know that she's the she refers to. So she kind of gets some shout outs from it. She enjoys it. Her school found out, and people there talk to her about it. So I think she likes it. She thinks it's pretty cool.
So, now that you've had this success and attacks, which means probably that you are successful if you get attacks, if you understand what I'm saying, are you encouraged now to write a second book?
I have no immediate plans, but I'm not ruling it out. I think definitely I can see myself doing it again.
So, what would you like to say? So, let's expand this a little bit. What would you like to say about encouraging, in this case, let's talk about American Jews to speak up against anti-Semitism right now? I mean, I'm doing a podcast and other things. You wrote this book, put yourself out there. What do you think about American Jews who don't understand that this doesn't just what's going on threaten Israel, but it threatens American democracy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I think those are kind of two separate points. So let me start with the first one of threatening Israel. I know that American Jews are a very heterogeneous bunch, and they come from a lot of places religiously and their connection to Israel. But you know, I would say that it wasn't that long ago that Israel, if you look kind of in the 60s and the 70s, Israel was almost the one thing that brought virtually all American Jews together. And I think that because we were closer to the Holocaust at that time. And I think that people of all religious persuasions, all walks of life knew that, you know, if it could happen in Germany, it could happen anywhere. And thank God, I love living in America, and I'm extremely grateful for, what America has done for my family. I'm an immigrant myself. I was born in Russia. I moved here when I was two. So I have a huge amount of gratitude for America. But I think that the lesson of the Holocaust is that it could happen anywhere. And I think that the one difference is that today we have Israel. And I think that is something that every 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 Jew across the world, in Israel, outside, in America, should be able to rally around and see. And I'll also say that we didn't get Israel for free. A lot of people died for it. A lot of people struggled for it. There was, so many lives went into making that dream a reality. And if we don't continue that, then there's no guarantee that we'll have it forever. And so I think that it's the responsibility of everyone who cares about that, every, every American Jew or Jew across the world to do what, what they can, even if it's a small thing, but even if it's just comes down to, if when they're talking to their friends or neighbors, just to kind of, say their side, say their story about it and not to be scared. Cause I get it, there, it's not a popular thing anymore, unfortunately, especially if you're on a college campus. It's not easy. It's not what it was, let's say 20 years ago, where, you can kind of wear a big Star of David, unfortunately, and walk around and, it's kind of the cool thing to do. It's sometimes it's not always cool, but that's when it counts. So I think every American Jew has a responsibility to do what they can for Israel, even if it's a little bit. And as far as, the second part of your question about American democracy, I never thought that in my lifetime I would see the level of anti-Semitism that there is today and how accepted it is. I remember a couple years ago, I was just talking to a non-Jewish colleague who was kind of worried about it. And I was like, there's no anti-Semitism here. Like, I think that if people are, you know, kind of putting this under the magnifying glass for their political odds and ends, whatever. And now I take it all back. I would honestly be very scared to wear a kippah or a Star of David on a college campus. Um, and like I said, the lesson of the Holocaust is that it can happen everywhere. And it's kind of like a weed that you have to continuously be diligent to
Exactly.
uproot. And I think that right now we've definitely got a lot of weeds, unfortunately,
I
from
think
both
that's
ends
a
of the
very,
political
yeah,
spectrum. Yeah, go ahead.
that's a very good analogy. I do a lot of reading about the interwar period between World War I and World War II. And what really frightens me is how parallel, both on college campuses and elsewhere, uh, the events parallel what happened in Germany in the interwar period. So I think that people who have any understanding of history should really be out there explaining and educating people. As it doesn't, of course, yes, the famous quote, it doesn't start with the Jews, but I'm waiting for, I don't like to talk about politicians, etc., but I'm waiting to know whether New York City wants to wait till it goes up in flames before it takes a really hard stance about what's going on, for example. It's just like, if the broken window theory, you can't
Yeah,
it's a little broken window. What difference does it make? And then the next one, the next one. Very important to speak up now and take it seriously.
yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So do you have any, as we come to the end of this very interesting conversation, do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share from writing this book, that you, not necessarily the book, but what you thought about as you wrote the book, what you discovered in your own thoughts?
Yeah, well, hmm. A lot of places I can take it. I think that one of the things that and kind of my personal narrative when it first came out, and I was really taken aback by the hate. Like I said, I was not expecting this level of attention. I didn't write the book for this level of attention. Had I known, by the way, there's probably some things I would have done differently, like the cover. I think like it's very easy to it can be misconstrued that the Jews are kind of sitting there watching the rockets land
Oh,
somewhere else. But you kind of like small things like that. But I think at first it really started bothering me that people took what was really an innocent kids books that's not political and attached it to words like genocide and Nazis and things like that. I mean, it's just like very over the top. And I think that after a while, I just kind of stopped caring. And I said, if I'm getting this level of hate, it means I'm doing something important. And I think that of when I listen to interviews of people who are far more courageous than I am and really like putting themselves out there for Israel, kind of public figures, celebrities, people really have much more to lose than I do. Also, I think that it's you know that's always kind of the narrative, and not just for Israel, really for any cause. Like like if you look at kind of cancel culture and the whole wokeism now, I think that the way that this the way that wokeism works is that it's designed to create a bunch of pressure, not legal pressure, not like you're going to
yes.
jail, but kind of
Social
personal
pressure.
intro, social pressure, exactly, to keep people down, to keep people from expressing their views. Like I said, I was born in Russia. It's very much reminds me of what
Yes.
happened in the beginning and in the end of communism. You know, people were just. It doesn't take that many people to be afraid to kind of cause this aura that you can't say that because negative consequences are happening. And I think that for everyone who kind of speaks out, I think that they kind of go through this phase where at first, you know, maybe they did it accidentally, maybe they didn't think it would be a big deal, and then all of a sudden it is, and I think it hurts a little bit, and then you kind of realize, hey, it's just internet trolls and people on Twitter, and it's, you know, it's, you kind of realize it's really not a big deal, and it becomes very refreshing to not be afraid anymore. It's a great feeling, and you know, I'm kind of coming over on the other side of that now, and it feels great. And I would encourage anyone else out there who, you know, if you have an idea, if you want to say something, like really don't be afraid, because if you're afraid and everyone is afraid, then you can imagine the consequences of that for whatever it is you believe in, whether it's Israel or whatever cause that you want to go to. So you know, don't be afraid to speak your mind, speak up, and you know, the consequences will almost never be as bad as you think they are.
Although I will add one thing, but try and do it civilly.
Yes,
First of all, I think it's very important to promote a civil society, but yelling at people is not going to change their mind. We need to speak calmly and really listen. Well, there are certain people that you can never change their minds or even educate them, but listen to what the people are saying so that you can figure out how to explain things to them in a way that I have this. Um, you have to know when it's like marketing. You have to know what it is that's important to the person you're trying to convince to buy your product or service. And so when you talk about Israel and you talk about Jewish history, it is helpful to know what is important to the person you're talking about. So it might be religion, it might be land, it might be history, but try and when you speak up, speak to what they're actually saying rather than a set, like just what's the word? Parroting phrases from one side to another. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
absolutely, 100%,
So
100%. And
in your book, that's what you did, is what I'm trying to say. You really found a way to speak about anti-Semitism October 7th without going down the route of da 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 da, by going back and explaining history to at a child's point of view. So I think it was is very successful. And as I say, thank you for being on the show. If there's any last words, otherwise I will get this up with a link to where they can buy the book.
thank you so much, Phyllis.
Okay. So as I end this show, I say, unfortunately, for an Israel at War episode, I say, bring them home now.
Amen.